consensus, and then I have an activity for us to do. We'll see if you guys can come to a consensus. Okay, parliamentary, can't say, talk this morning, procedure is rule by majority. Y'all know what that's talking about? Y'all ever been a part of a club or a organization where it's like you had to come up with, or maybe you've been to a meeting where they've done this, where it's like somebody has to come up with an idea and then somebody has to second it,
Yeah.
and then everybody has to, if everybody agrees, say yes, whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Well, anyways, that is called parliamentary procedure. It's kind of like a business meeting type of procedure that you go through if you've got, voting members of the club or whatever. But it's always typically ruled by majority. If you've ever been to like a church business meeting or something like that, you've probably seen that. It says majority rule is the most effective if a consensus is reached. So if you figure out an idea that seems like everybody can live with, what it's talking about is majority rule. I mean, what does that mean?
Like, majority has to say yes, or
Yes.
it doesn't go.
So majority of you three, how many would we have to say yes? We'd have to have 2, right? Good. Okay, so the definition of consensus is a collective opinion or concord, generally, or a general agreement or accord. So basically, it's just that everybody decides to do the same. So everybody is, has the same idea, not the same idea, everybody is on board with whatever direction that you're going. There are some misunderstandings about consensus. Consensus does not necessarily mean that everybody agrees with what is being done, that everybody, agrees. It's simply a general agreement to carry on with something. So I may say, okay, fine, I'll go with that. I really don't want to do it, but, that's what the whole group wants to do, then that's fine. Does that make sense? Doesn't necessarily mean that everybody agrees with whatever you're doing, but everybody does agree to move forward. Or at least majority agrees to move forward, I guess I should say. Another misunderstanding is that all team decisions should be made by consensus, okay? Consensus is not necessarily the best thing to do all the time. You have to weigh it out, figure out, is this something that's, is worth doing an actual consensus, or do we already really know the way we should go and just avoid the consensus and just say, if I'm the team leader, do I just say what we're going to do instead of going through the rounds and hearing from everybody or whatever? Not necessarily correct for every situation. So another is that the final consensus decision reflects the first choice of each team member. Not always going to be the case. Everybody's first choice is not usually going to be the same. So consensus is not necessarily going to mean that everybody got their first pick. Another misunderstanding is that consensus is fast and easy. Not typically. You guys know that. Think about when you were trying to figure out what you're going to do with your terminology game. It took like 2 days of class just to figure out what you were going to do, right?
Emily. No.
Finally, that misunderstanding is that consensus means compromise. Those two words are not the same. Consensus means everybody's deciding to go one direction whether they like it or not. Compromise means everybody's putting in ideas and you're going to add up everybody's ideas to make one. Does that make sense? Like even within the context of my marriage, we'll say, okay, now my husband may decide something's best for us, and we may come to a consensus that, yes, that's the best. Hello? Even though that may not be necessarily what I want to do, I'm going to say, okay, we'll go with that because, I respect you and we're going to do that. That's a consensus. Okay? A compromise is like he comes up with an idea, I come up with an idea, and we kind of mix and match our ideas until we come up with one idea together. Does that make sense? There are some general beliefs about consensus. So it is a mindset as well as a process, right? And you can see that consensus, you have to, it's about doing what's best for the group versus necessarily what's doing best for you. So it kind of has to change the way that you think when you think consensus, when you're thinking, how do I work best in a group or a team? Consensus that's authentic requires that team members be more concerned about community, less concerned about power, like we just talked about. What they want is better for the team instead of themselves. It requires that the team be more focused on team productivity than individual credit. Consensus demands mature behavior on the part of everyone. Have y'all ever been in a group or a team where you've had some really immature people? It's really difficult to get things done when you're like that. When you have people like that, you can't trust them, right? To get their part done. So it makes you feel like you need to do their part too. The recognized leader holds himself or herself and others accountable for participation. So that's one thing that you have to be really careful of. I think we sometimes think that, okay, we're afraid this person's not going to do our job, so I'm going to step up and be the leader, and I'm just going to do it all. But a good leader doesn't actually do that. A good leader doesn't actually just do it all because they want to get it done. A good leader figures out a way to motivate people or to gently push people in a direction that everybody can be involved and everybody can get their part done.
Unless they're Hitler. They kill everybody.
Yeah, but we're talking about good leaders, okay? We're talking about good leaders. But you even think about him, okay? Even thinking about Hitler. He was, horrible. Horrible
he had
things.
to be a good leader, though, because he got all the people to follow him.
He had to have, there was something about him that was so motivating for people that they followed him, and he, it's almost like this brainwashing kind of idea that it was okay to view another whole people as lower than yourself. So he's got this, he had to have some kind of charisma or something that, that made people motivated to follow him. And that's that was horrible because of what they followed him into. But at the same time,
it could have been something really good.
It could have been if his movement would have been something good. Think about how amazing it would have been. Kind of crazy to think about. But I do find that it's typically easier to motivate people to do negative things than it is positive things, which is sad. Sad thing. Anyway. But it says the recognized leader holds himself or herself and others accountable for open, honest participation. So a good leader doesn't just do all the work themselves and then think that they are this great leader because they did the project themselves. A good leader motivates people, brings people in. Maybe you figure out what people are interested in. Maybe this person's really good at writing, so you're going to let them do the writing. That's a good leader, is they figure out what can I get people to do that they will actually do, instead of just trying to do it all myself.
So, if you had two people that like the job, you make them both job good, and they both want to do and you have an extra job because you have a job and everybody else has a job except for them two people, and they both want to do the same thing, team them up.
Yeah, split them up. Say you do this half, you do this half, and maybe there's another job that they didn't want to do so much, and split that one up and give them each that one. But if you'll give people something to be excited about, it'll make them want to do it more. Like I just did this. I did a different project this year than I did with you guys for my Health Science 1 student, or my Principles of Health Science students. So we made this museum display this year. So they each took an era, and what they did was they had to make like a museum display. It had to include lots of different things. And when I, told them that we were going to actually display them in the library, now this didn't work for everybody, but some of them, that really motivated them to want to do a better job, because it was like, okay, we're gonna, everybody's going to see it, it's going to have our name on it, you know what I'm saying? So that was like a motivating factor that kind of pushed everybody a little bit farther than they might have gone otherwise. And that's what you've got to find, what's going to really motivate people, So the cool thing was about that project is that it had so many different options. They could draw pictures, they could draw maps, they could draw a timeline, they could do whatever. And it gave lots of freedom in that so that different people could do different things that they were good at.
Is that the one that we did when we had to choose the people? And
Yes, last year I think we did people, like that picture back there, the Da Vinci picture or whatever.
Yeah, that's
But
mine.
theirs was a lot more extensive this year than what I've done in the past, but I gave them a lot more time to do it. So yeah, and they turned out really good. I need to go see them in the library. Anyway, so that's the thing. You gotta figure out kind of what motivates people. Because again, the best leaders figure out a way for everybody to be involved, not just do the work themselves. Make sense? Of course, sometimes it's hard to do that. The team must be open to continuous learning in order to use consensus effectively. So make sure people stay flexible, like my bird on the door. There's a reason I have that in here. Okay, in order for consensus to be a viable option, ground rules must be established and followed. Okay, if we're all going to do this together, we're all going to try to figure this out together, we're going to set some ground rules. Disagreements are acceptable as long as you explain why. You can't just say, I don't want to do that. Why? I just don't want to. Well, that's not a good reason. Your opinion gets thrown out if you don't have a good reason, in my book anyway. Express differences of opinion to help expose all available alternatives. Sometimes when you'll express whatever you don't agree with or you don't think is a good idea, another good idea kind of, comes out of that somewhere along the way. So you never know. Rigid argument for one position should be avoided. All members' reactions should be heard and considered. So always take in everybody's opinion, be sensitive to their ideas, their thoughts, and so forth. One should never change his or her mind to avoid conflict. Support should only be given to options that are truly accepted. Okay, don't just say, because you don't want to argue or you don't want to go against something that you're okay. If you have a good idea, voice it. Everybody's opinion should always be heard and respected. Doesn't mean that you have to go with everybody's opinion, but they should at least get the chance to give it. Evaluation should be suspended until all points of view are presented, like when we talked about with brainstorming. Have a backup plan in case a consensus can't be reached, in case everybody is at odds and what to do. Having backup plans. So maybe you don't make a decision and you don't continue, okay, which hopefully is not usually an option. B, a third party decides. What does that mean?
Be a what?
A third party decides. And let's say
The last person decided something?
third party is somebody who's on the outside. Okay, so let's say my husband and I are having an argument and I'm completely on this end and he's completely on this end. We might go to a good friend, of ours who could be a third party and say, okay, well, your idea, yes and no, your idea, yes and no. What if you did this? And let a third party kind of decide. That's a third party. It's somebody who's on the outside completely of what's going on. That makes sense? The leader decides. Maybe you say, okay, if we can't come to an agreement, then I'm the leader and I'm just going to decide what we're going to do and we're going to go from there. Designated committee, which, depends on what you're doing, that can, not necessarily in this class would that be pertinent. Luck decides. Maybe something works out. Maybe it's like, okay, well, dollar store has this type of poster board, so that's what we're using because that's what's available. Okay. Split decision. Maybe everybody kind of goes their own way, or then majority rules. So raise your hands and we'll decide from there. Consensus process. So how do you get to a consensus? One, the problem or the issue is clarified, just like we talked about with problem solving. Everybody discusses their thoughts, their ideas. Everybody make sure you clarify, go back to the directions, go back to the rules, or go back to the problem and look at it. Each person gives their opinion. The minority expresses their view, so maybe you've got 5 people against 3 people. Both should have opportunity to give their opinion. The team problem solves the minority's view, and then again, each individual gives their stance. So It's talking about the minorities, just talking about the, maybe there's a whole bunch of people on this side and a few on here. Everybody, like I said, should get their chance. Levels of agreement. So you can have 100%, sufficient. Maybe you decided X percent, 66%, or 75% means we're all on the same page. Democratic is just everybody votes. Autocratic, self. Remember, auto means self. Nice. With input from the group, so maybe the whole group decides together. But then the leader has it in the end, or if the leader, again, decides himself or herself. Okay, so negative behaviors or distractors in group dynamics. So we've talked about a few of these in leadership behaviors, but these are a little bit different. So these are your negative team people. So we've talked about blockers, we've talked about clowns. Think about some of these. Okay, the latecomer arrives late, makes a big commotion, brings all their stuff, right? Wants to be caught up. Then at that point, okay, and I think about class because that's what I think about when I think of class. That's the person who comes in late, they're being really loud, they throw all their stuff on the floor, and they're like, what did I miss? What did you say while I was gone? And then they give reasons as to why they were late. Okay, like, I don't know, I dropped my book in the water fountain, or I got locked in the bathroom stall, I don't know. Give reasons, Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Those are horrible reasons.
I know. That they typically are for the latecomer. Because normally, if a person really did have something going on that they were late for, that only happens every once in a while. That's not something, they don't get locked in the bathroom stall every day. And you gotta learn how to open it.
You crazy.
Or someone just needs to teach you how to open it. I don't know. But you can all think of, groups you've been in where you've had people like this. The early leaver. And they're the one who's like, oh, y'all got this, I'm going. I'm good, y'all are good. Y'all don't need me. I'm leaving.
Why'd you look at me?
They tend to drain the energy from the session. When that starts happening, everybody just kind of like, I want to be done too. The broken record keeps bringing up the same point over and over. Well, we should have done this. No, I told y'all we should have done it that way. I told y'all. I told y'all. I told y'all. I told y'all.
That's the person
tried to
that
tell y'all.
everybody tells to shut up.
They take up your time, right? Because they keep bringing everything up. Okay, the doubting Thomas, aggressively negative. Uses phrases like, that'll never work. No, that's not going to work. It's
That
never
was
going to
Italy
happen.
when we did the project.
Yeah.
That was definitely
Okay, the dropout. This is the person who sits at the back of the room, doesn't say anything, doesn't participate,
That was us. We just chilling around. We don't care what we do.
reads. Wait, I'm missing something. Doesn't say anything. I'm missing something. Anyway, okay. The whisper. Whispers constantly to their neighbor. They're not really engaged, so you're all trying to have a big team group meeting,
Oh my gosh,
and
that
they're
was
the one
last
who's
year.
whispering and cutting up and not really paying attention to what everybody's trying to say, really irritates the group, especially the team leader, and breaks the concentration.
Remember when we did the debate thing? Ooh, that was making me so mad. Like we're all up here looking up stuff and trying to figure out what we're gonna put in the argument. They're just down there whispering, and we're like, dude, are you serious?
Happens. Okay, use the know-it-all. This is the person who uses their credentials, age, length of service, or their status to argue a point. So, well, I've been to blah, blah, blah. Or I went to school for this and this and this. Or I've already taken this class. I know what we're doing. I don't know. And then last is the loudmouth. Okay, these are people that talk too loud. They dominate, right? They like try to talk over everybody. It's like everybody trying to get in their ideas and they can't because that person won't stop talking and they're so loud that nobody can even hear themselves think. and then pull attention away from the focus of the session. So you can think of, I mean, match these up with circumstances or instances when you have, done teamwork or group work, and think about some of those.
Last year when we did our video project, I did have to leave early though, but that's not because I wanted to do it. I wanted to be done. But I waited till like we got done with the videos and stuff. All they were doing was putting them together. But if I would have stayed, the transition, I could have did the transition part because we could have got a break.
It's okay. We're not upset with you for being the early leaver.
I had to leave because my mom was like, "Where are you at?"
It'll be
I was
okay.
like, "Where?"
Okay, I'm gonna let you guys work as a group, and what you're gonna do is, I have this is a,
She did it on purpose.
this is a who should survive problem, so I want you guys to come up with this, kind of like make a note of how, of course, now y'all have heard about consensus, so you're probably all gonna be like super consensus-y, but anyways, you'll have, let's see, we get out at 9:40, so you've got about 10 minutes. Wait. Yeah, about 10 minutes, 8 or 10 minutes to figure out, I'll let you guys read it and then